Okay, let's get into this. Actually, I have a list of people this time. I'm gonna type. Bit rate is. What the fuck? Hold on. Warning. Oh. Why did it say that? Weird. Yeah, I think this is on a lower bit rate. No, it. I wonder everything in settings. I don't know why it sent me that message. Weird. Okay. Fuck it. It was good last time, so. Yeah. Good connection. Hello, Gabriel. Okay, we're gonna start with everything pulled up. Okay, cool. First person we're gonna type is Nicholas Shrek. I don't remember how to spell his name. Is this the one? No. There's one where they're talking about music. Is this the one?
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Well, this is the one where it's somebody actually interviewing him, because he's done a lot of like interviews, but he's just talking about Manson or other things. He's not talking about himself. So this one he's actually talking about himself. Is the audio good?
So, nature versus nurture is very interesting to me when it comes to music and what you're surrounded with as a child and how it affects you as a musician growing up. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering what sort of music your parents were into and how much it was around you as a child.
I have to adjust the bit rate on this is horrible. I have to adjust the settings, but I guess the video is not as important.
Immensely so. First of all, my father was a fairly good singer, was an amateur singer in the 1930s. He was even on Major Bow's radio show and sang. So he was a good singer, and he was a musician, and he taught me to.
I just realized that my face is hidden.
To play guitar when I was very young. The first song that I played, which I'm going to do a cover version of, and I have performed live in 2016, was, and I think to directly answer your question, this had a huge influence. He went through a folk music bohemian phase very briefly, and he taught me to play Tom Dooley. And so that's obviously a song about death and a hanging and execution. And I think that absolutely set my mind to writing death ballads and the morbidity of my
The
music.
funny thing is, I could have just asked publicly or privately for me to personality type him since I'm friends with him on Facebook, but I know he's not into that shit.
Certainly, even though I was already drawn to that.
Right.
That was literally the first song I learned to play and to sing. He taught me that when I.
His YouTube channel is a rabbit. You'll go down a big rabbit hole. This guy has known like every interesting person in existence, and has like 3-hour podcasts talking about him knowing Charles Manson, from knowing Richard Ramirez, from knowing Christopher Lee, other musicians. He's the former son-in-law of Anton LaVey. I mean, he has way too many interesting stories. You'll go down a rabbit hole.
I was, a very, very young child. Also, my parents were surrounded by musicians, mostly jazz musicians, but also pop musicians. So, for instance, the first time I picked up a microphone, they were promoting a show of Herman's Hermits during the British invasion. I was a tiny little kid, and Peter Noon of Herman's Hermits invited me on stage during the sound check, and that's who taught me to hold a microphone.
Wow.
The first time I played a piano or even touched one, really, I was practically an infant. I went to a concert of Count Basie's, who they also knew, in Las Vegas, and he was playing for Sinatra. His band was playing for Sinatra, and
wow.
Again, during the sound check, he put me on his lap, and Basie showed me a chord or two. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up on stages and with a total familiarity of show business. So I think an advantage I had absolutely no idea of it being glamorous or wonderful. I saw it as another profession, and I saw all the problems that musicians had,
Right. And being that you saw all that sort of stuff, what do you know what point it hit you that
talks a lot, goes in details about every little detail about a story and facts and everything. So either an INTP, ENTP, INFP, ENFP, ISFJ, ESFJ, or ISFP, ESFP.
Well, apart from all this craziness that goes on around this is what I want to do. This is what I'm feeling.
Even before that, music is everything to me. It is definitely, it's by far the most important art form to me. And
he probably has the most amount of degrees of separation with everybody. Yeah, probably.
More than that, it's my life itself. So as soon as, it's almost an insanity to the degree that I've always been sensitive to music.
Yeah.
And I can tell you when I first started thinking about it even, was my parents had this huge 1950s era entertainment complex, like an old Magnavox stereo that looked like a tank.
Yeah.
And they had all their records in it, mostly classical and movie soundtracks, which I listened to on vinyl. But on the radio would get two stations at once, and I think it says a lot about my music. I would try to get the radio tuned so that classical music would be mixed in with some other music and make it exactly in a perfect balance. So that I had two, and I think my music is like that, in that I incorporate many different elements that don't necessarily belong together. And I think that's one of the formulas, if there is one, or at least a pattern in my music, is bringing avant-garde elements and pop elements together in a way that don't really fit exactly. And I think
that's so interesting.
And I think that comes from that. So I listened to a lot of classical music as a child, um, 19th century romantic classical music. And then growing up in the 60s, of course, now I hated the Beatles, and that was a very definite beginning of my feeling of being contrary and against
Right.
the grain of what I mean. I detested them just on first sight. They made me cringe. I can't tell you why. And
Just
so I
wasn't
always
your scene.
they just seemed
Oh, he asked me one time. I'll just leak this. He asked me one time he's like, "Can I check out your videos?" I'm like, "Yeah, Nicholas Shrek." And he didn't say anything. It just said "scene." I think he was embarrassed. He's like, "This guy's fucking.
so
Who's
cloying
this fucking stupid
and
ass
self-affected,
YouTuber?"
and Paul McCartney particularly so charmed with himself. It just rubbed me the wrong way. And so I looked
Right.
for the darker, rougher, uh, deeper edge of pop music. And then, so the psychedelic era had a big effect on me. You know, like
Right.
after 66, 67, 68, the whole psychedelic period, which was very keyboard dominated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important part of my music too. As we've
Right.
discussed before, the guitar has almost no place until my most recent album. I've never ever used a guitar in any of my music, and I think it's a very overrated instrument, and it's not one that I'm, very I say to the man who has guitars hanging all over him, but you do have a real instrument there. You do have a keyboard too.
As
So
well. We
yeah,
had
so yeah, so
Uh, Chat, do you hate guitar music? I don't.
psychedelic music affected me a lot. But I'd say, if you're like asking for influences, I'd say movie soundtrack music was probably what most captivated me in my youth.
That
So,
makes a lot of sense alongside the you saying about the two radio stations coming together, because something I was going to talk to you about, and it just doesn't matter. We can jump around a little bit. Is that your music is very like one song to the next is a completely different experience,
right,
and it's
that's very important to me. Yeah,
right, and it's kind of like listening to um, I think rock opera is the wrong thing, but some sort of stage play, but you're just listening to it, and it has something to do. All of it has something to do with each other, but at the same time is disconnected enough that you can listen to everything on its own, and it all
right.
makes sense.
I think, and another thing. So then, if that was my childhood influences, you're definitely right there too. My basic training and the only thing I took seriously in school, which I mostly dropped out very early and mostly ignored it, was theater. So I did a
Mm-hmm.
lot of musical theater, and and often played villainous or the darker roles in musical theater, and that
Right.
so I
Pragmatic
think you're totally right. A lot of my
into
songs
being a villain.
thus far are character studies, and that's another thing
Character
people don't
studies,
get about
abstracts,
about music. They assume if you write a song, it's for you're Joni Mitchell
MBTI.
writing a confessional diary entry, and I don't. I mean, I occasionally write songs that are personal expressions, but David Thomas of Pere Ubu, which is one of my favorite bands, always said that self-expression is evil, and
Right.
I do think it's like very masturbatory. A lot of music is just somebody's
T.I.
day,
Blind
their personal emotions
Can't
about
step
something.
high.
And I tend to write, like you say,
Damn.
mini. Well, you could say rock
Systematic.
opera is as pretentious as that
Damn.
is. I mean,
Yeah.
every song is a narrative. It's a
Right.
character. It's I mean
Every song.
the songs from Radio Werewolf that offended people
Abstract.
and still do so much. It's not like Nicholas Schreck, am singing these words. It is me being somebody. But rock
Yeah.
audiences don't have a lot of irony or sarcasm or awareness of even character or distance. So I think you're totally right. There's a theatrical element, even though what I'm saying is real and I mean
Right.
it.
Yeah.
It's through a character. And then
Absolutely.
only recently have would I say I've moved somewhat away from that, but not entirely. And I think
Right.
some of my more recent songs are more abstract. I don't know why. It's just the
Right.
development that one
I don't
goes
know why,
through, and
progression.
they're more just directly emotionally expressing some abstract emotion, and they're not necessarily a narrative or a character. But that's a very recent development.
Right. And I mean that's another thing that I enjoy about your music is you haven't put any limitations on yourself in any which way. You can play whatever you want and you can sing about whatever you want, which is fantastic. That's the type of freedom that people
Because
want.
my songwriting is not like I can't stand bands and musicians that always put out the same formula over and over. I know that's what people want, and
Hmm.
I know they prefer if I just stick to whatever they first heard that they liked. But
Right.
I'm
He is not an ISFP or an ESFP.
I'm literally not capable of doing it. And then I think a kind of rule of thumb of my songwriting is that the song sounds like what the theme of the song is.
Right.
So, if it's a cowboy song, it's not going to be heavy metal. If it, it's
Yeah.
gonna it'll then I mean if I ever do a country and western song, which I could, it would
Yeah.
be because that would be appropriate to the theme. So the
Right.
theme dictates the sound. I mean, like, and I'm very much like almost obsessively looking for some authentic element to include, like in the Radio Werewolf song Charlie's Girl. I recently put that out on my Instagram page about how Al Cooper, the keyboard player for Bob Dylan and the Stones and many others, Mike Bloomfield, legendary keyboard player of the 60s, he happened to be in the studio when we were recording Charlie's Girl. And so he volunteered to play this fantastic organ solo that
Wow.
sounds right out of the 60s because it is. I mean, he is the epitome of that sound. And so I often use musicians that have something to do with the theme or
Interesting.
use an instrument or some sound or sample
MBTI.
something that particular and that too gets into the magical aspect of it in that each song is not only a theatrical mini film or mini theatrical
Sure.
production or opera but also a ritual designed to make something happen within me and to the listener.
Right. And that's when listening to your music, it's not a passive listen. You don't put it in the background and just go about your day. It's one of those things where if you pay enough attention, because there's the surface
Yeah,
stuff, there's
well,
the
like,
there's the humor, there's the different influences of eras, etc., that you've got going on, but there's also um, there's a lot of deeper things. You play with the senses a little bit, whether it's intentional or not. Like there's different things that you'll hear that will spark sight and stuff like that, like or memories of certain things.
Right,
And I
right.
and I think that's a really interesting aspect to your music. And I've
I
got
think
questions
I
about that too.
Sure. Well, yeah, go ahead. I was just going to add that the visual part, I have a kind of subtle form of synesthesia, not an extreme form. But in
Right.
other words, when I play a note or sing a note, it
All intuitives. Synesthesia. How do you know you're intuitive type? Is you have synesthesia, pretty much. So he is not an ISFJ or an ESFJ. Down to four types. An NT type or an FB type.
I get a color or an image,
Yeah.
and I mean, music to me is connected to visuals as well. So very
Right.
often, and this is the mysterious thing about music for me anyway, is a
Yeah.
melody and a lyric will come to me. I could be walking down the street
Any
or anywhere, and it
which
will
I
come
would
to
have
me
to look.
fully formed, as if transmitted from somewhere.
Right.
Regression.
It's not I find it's difficult to even say that I wrote it. It came to me, and then I transcribe it and I feel like I'm getting messages that I'm trying to bring to earth and record in this very already metaphysical thing of taking sounds which don't even exist and can hardly, and capturing them. But
Yeah.
they come from somewhere else, and there's not a lot of intentionality
Okay, so he's
to it. But there is like when I hear music, I get
down to INTP, ENTP.
visuals. It's like I can. It's like a dream starts to form, and so my lyrics and music are connected to visuals. So it's interesting that you pick that up on.
That's very, and you know what's interesting to me about that is I had no idea about that. But one of my other favorite artists who has a very theatrical, it's like more heavy metal stuff, but has a very theatrical aspect to it, has also mentioned that he has that. And when he'd be talking to his band before he'd really looked into it much, he'd be like, "It's the green part. What are you guys
Yeah,
doing?"
I can totally understand that. I mean, it. I try to be a little more clear in communicating to my
Yeah.
band, but I always think of Brian Wilson in the bootleg tapes of the Smile recordings, where you hear them talking about the recording in the sound booth, and he's saying no to the percussionist Hal Blaine of the Wrecking Crew. He's saying no, more like jewelry, more like jewelry. And Hal
Right.
Blaine is thinking, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But I can totally understand that. And
Right.
sometimes I will give directions like that to my musicians. So
Right. And then in that case, if you do give them something that's open like that, how do they respond usually? Like, is it do they nail it, or is it a little bit of you have to work
I
with them?
I have been very lucky, and with my current band, very lucky to have people who are very responsive. And it's like casting a movie. I work with people who I know will instinctively and automatically get what I need.
Right.
I couldn't really work with just a session musician who just plays the notes. It is a collaborative effort, and they have to feel it, and they have to bring something of their own to it. So to do this, I have to actually have a rapport with musicians I work with, because also, again, it's like a magical ceremony. You can't do a ritual with people who are not in the same wavelength. And the
No.
issues I've had with musicians that I've worked in the past are, by doing the music, we find out we're going in a different direction. So sometimes you are going in the same direction, and then you realize you're diverting from that path. So
Right. And your music is more like when we had spoken a little few minutes ago about session musicians. They're very like, this is what I want, this is what you get. Where your music is a little bit more organic sounding. It seems that having musicians that would organically get what you're talking about and have their own natural spin on it would be
well,
more than
yeah, it to me it only works when they bring something exciting and vibrant of their own into the vision I bring to them.
right. And that's the beautiful thing about music. It's so collaborative, and it's above everything. Like you say, it's just
Right, it's
brings
transcendent.
everything together.
Yeah, now that the pandemic seems to be normalizing,
Yeah.
I intend to focus almost entirely on music again. I've been working on a lot of books that are nearly done, or had been delayed by the strict lockdown that we had here in Germany. But now I intend to totally focus on music from this
That's
point on.
perfect. It's and from being on stage myself, I can empathize with not having been able to do it for so long.
Okay, good.
Right.
It really is that thing that kind of centers you.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of going back a little bit, your parents being musical and
Mm-hmm.
seeing you evolve through the years, what were their response to things like Radio Werewolf and
Oh, they weren't surprised. They had to deal with this. I mean, I was the kind of kid who. Oh, we've lost the mic again.
what? Oh no, it's working.
Okay.
I can still hear you.
I was the kind of kid who would leave a rubber hand in the refrigerator and blood and ketchup leading to my bedroom so that my mother would find it. So yeah, Radio Werewolf was just can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay, good, because it's a bit clippy here. Anyway,
Oh,
so
is it?
yeah,
Okay.
so I don't
Right.
really see music as like a way to say fuck you to society.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
so
You rebelling, you would have been like a lawyer or something.
exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that I think that's like, and that's why even when I was a Satanist or was a devil worshiper, to make it clear, someone who believed in the devil, not an atheist Satanist, uh,
Right.
I don't see it as necessarily being a rebellious adolescent, anarchic thing. I see it as a form of order, and
Right.
and this has made me very alienated from my peers in the rock world that are usually like eternally teenagers thumbing their nose at society, which I
Yeah.
don't really, I don't really feel connected to that whole impulse.
Right. And them thumbing their nose at society and trying to be on their own is just like they're all doing the exact same thing. So
Oh well, right.
it's
I mean, I
what's
could go
the
on.
difference?
I could rant and rave about the hypocrisy of conformists
Yeah.
being nonconformist, but doing it in the very proper conformist way. Yeah. So
You get stuck in that. Okay, so you had mentioned your dad showed you some stuff on guitar. I'm curious about your formal music training. Did you have a piano teacher?
I went to a piano teacher, but I was not a good student, and I
Mm,
learned the basics, and but I did not have the discipline to. I if
Progression.
Well, actually, maybe I should put it like this. I wanted to go into musical theater and classical music. I would not have gone into rock music or whatever you want to call whatever genre I
yeah.
do. I don't know. That's what people stick it into. I don't know if that is what it actually is.
Well, I
What
don't think they
happened
can
was,
put it anywhere. There's so many
yeah,
different genres
I
in there.
never know how to answer the question. What is my music? I don't know.
Yeah.
But so I was really a
Progression.
snob about rock
ENTP.
music as a teenager.
He is an ENTP. Try stereotyped as ENTP, so not surprising. I think I spelled it wrong. He's a 514. Alright, I don't think Gabriel's here. If Gabriel's not here, then I won't type Adrian Borland yet. So I'll move on to somebody else. Alright, just let me know if you're still here, Gabriel. And I'll type Adrian, but I'll move on for now.
Slaagt Charles Bukowski te offreren. To see if it was you. To be sure, you know.
So I would look at the clock, it'd say, when I quit the post office, I used to go to work at 6:18 p.m. So I would look at the clock, it'd say 6:18 p.m., I'd sit down at the typewriter and start typing. But it was much more joyful because I had a drink there and a cigar and the radio on. It was a better job, much better. So.
Did you work every night? No.
To begin with, yeah, I was petrified. I thought I couldn't make it. I was going to be a professional writer. So there was a lot of fear there, I have to admit, because I didn't have any money and I had to write a lot of dirty stories for the sex magazines, you know, to get money so I could write the other stuff. So the stories later became famous, these sex stories that I was writing for $1, you know.
And they were published.
Yeah, and they got published in as real literature.
Oh, real literature.
Well, see, all they wanted was sex in a story.
Means to an end.
So what I tried to do was put sex in and put the real thing in around it, see? So
Just to sell it.
Yeah, the bit rate on this
they had to have sex. So I'd write a story and somewhere I'd just drop in some sex, you know? And I'd go on telling my story.
And where did you get your inspiration from? I mean, alcohol.
Yeah. I never write without it.
You drink a lot?
Pragmatic.
Too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
But what do you drink when you're writing? I mean, beer,
just wine.
whiskey, wine.
Whiskey doesn't work because you get drunk too fast. On beer, wine, you can go on for hours, you know. Whiskey, hour and 10 minutes, you're finished. Your writing gets bad or over-dramatic, gets shitty. So wine is best, red wine.
But you're drinking when you're writing?
Yeah.
Or you're writing when you're drinking?
Well, often,
You don't know
I
it
don't
anymore.
know. Well, should we go in there?
Yeah. Many authors have very well organized work areas,
Yeah,
but this
I know.
one is not not the same.
No, it isn't.
Pragmatic.
It's quite a better desk, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the desk was here when we moved in. The guy who lived here, so I said, oh, my first desk. So, yeah, I like it in here. It's okay.
It reminds you a little bit of your past,
Yeah, and
the rooms you used to live in
it
East Hollywood.
tends to keep you humble, I think. What's the matter, beauty?
Dat was het makkelijke van schrijver zijn. Vrije tijd. Veel te veel vrije tijd.
These 4 or 5 of them are just broadsides, you know. So.
And those things you write down in one night.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll write it in the night, and then the next morning or the next night, I'll correct it. You know, the drunken lines. I'll retype the whole thing the next night. Then to do that, you have to get drunk too to make it enjoyable. You know, so.
Has to be
Usually with poems or stories, anything I write in a night, the next night I straighten it out again. It takes 2 nights. One is kind of the inspiration, and the other is to make it so people understand what the hell I'm talking about the second night.
T.I.
Drank.
Introvert thinkers tend to take very complex things and try to explain them in a very simple way.
You many years before you became famous. I mean, wasn't there a time that you thought that you would end up like the poet in Bellows' Humble's Gift, who became famous after his death?
I don't read
the
Bellows,
country said, oh.
but yeah. Famous after you're dead? No, I never considered that. All I wanted was to write well enough to pay the rent and have something to drink.
Systematic, pragmatic. And also, FITE, SE, got, so systematic, pragmatic, that would be INTJ, ENTJ, ISTP, ESTP, INTP, ENTP.
I never really expected this kind of luck. I didn't expect it.
Didn't expect it.
I felt I could write good compared to the others, but I didn't expect anything to happen. You know, I wanted survival, that's all. A bare survival.
We rijden naar East Hollywood, een arme en gore buurt van L.A., volk met armoezaaiers, eenzamen en hoeren, het actieterrein voor criminelen en politie. Hier betrok Charles Hank Bukowski zelf goedkope huurkamers. Maar op zijn 50ste besloot hij om fulltime schrijver te worden.
Very good. Do you have freeways in Belgium?
Yeah, freeways as well.
You have? It's like an American. You got cars in Belgium?
We got cars.
You have women?
We got women.
Women?
Ketchup, everything you want.
You know, we think Belgium. What can be in Belgium, you know? How dumb of us, right? The first place we're going is I'm still working at the post office. And I quit the job to become a writer, you know, a professional writer. And my landlady there, she said, "You quit that job? You must be crazy." I said, "No." She says, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "I'm gonna become a writer." She says, "Oh, you poor, poor man." Oh. Her and her husband thought I was crazy. And so in the morning, there would be radishes on the front porch, potatoes, tomatoes. They put them in at my door. They thought I was crazy. I couldn't take care of myself.
Het postkantoor. 11 jaar. 11 jaar naar de bliksem. Ik had gezien hoe mannen door dit werk werden opgevreten. Ze smolten of ze werden...
This is the kitchen. Looks about the same. Everything's the same. I remember this little breakfast.
But it's how many years ago that you lived here?
Oh, 12.
12.
1970. That's much longer, isn't it? 1970 is when I'm...
Did you have other jobs?
Other jobs? No, just the... Oh, you mean before the post?
Yeah.
50, 60 jobs.
What kind of jobs? Small?
Slaughterhouse, shipping clerk, nothing jobs.
Bad, low-pay jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I mean, the characters from your novels, most of the time, they are outcasts, loners, bums. People
I met them here,
drifting
yeah.
from one dead-end job to another, and you met them here.
Yeah, I met a lot of them. So having all these bad jobs made me meet people that most writers wouldn't meet, you know, because so I got a lot of material among the poor and the depraved and
experiences, especially
there's a lot of material there.
Can't talk right now. Crazy experiences or harsh experiences, just I see people thrive in difficult situations and get inspiration from it. NESI users, not like any types can, but in general, NESI is very sensitive towards harsh situations. So that makes him INTJ.
Story. So I was one of them.
How many years ago?
10.
10 already, huh?
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
I was reading all of his books, and then we just got together because he was doing research at the time for a novel called Women. And so
you could help him.
He was researching women.
She was the last.
I was the last.
She closed the book. There've been none since.
But she stayed anyway, I mean.
10 years, yes.
10 years.
Yes.
She closed the book. That's it.
How can you suffer living with him?
It's God's
you want
grace.
me to go away? With God's help.
It's God's grace. It's in the plan.
Because according to Shakespeare never did this before, you're quite opposite characters.
Yeah.
Everything he enjoys bores you and...
Not really. That's just external things, you
Oh,
know,
external.
mundane sort of external things.
What keeps you going anyway?
Our relationship with our souls. What else?
Souls.
Yeah, well.
We're cosmic mates.
Do you like being married to a very famous writer?
Yeah. But I like being married to Hank most of all.
Good girl.
Is that okay,
girl.
dear?
Yes, that was
Thank
a
you.
nice answer. Yes. Okay. Should we go now? I mean, this... Get the parts where I cried in bed because tears came to my face because I invited 2 women to have Thanksgiving with me, and I didn't know which one to go to. I mean, no, there are many moments in there where I look like a complete asshole, and I felt like one.
If you...
No, I just wasn't jumping into bed and fucking and jumping out of bed. I'm sorry. It would be nice for me to say that and pretend I'm the tough guy, but I'm not that tough.
But in your stories, love is always a synonym for sexual intercourse.
Where do you
That's
get
not too romantic,
Where do you
is
get
it?
this crap, baby? Love is a dog from hell.
T.I.
That's all. It has its own agonies. It brings its own agonies with it.
So
But I mean, I don't know where you get your concepts from, man. You're really fucked up.
Thank you for the compliment.
That's all right.
Thank you.
I always like to be honest. Is that the end of the interview?
No, it still isn't.
Oh. To me, it has nothing to... there's no self-victory of consuming another human being and throwing them away. Like a one-night stand, good night. To me, I've never been to bed with any woman that I didn't feel some sympathy towards, you know. Like I look over and see a shoe, one of her shoes in the corner, tilted. I would actually feel a relationship to that shoe and her and me. So I'm not one of these guys who just fucks and rides and knocks a guy out in an alley and jacks off
Progression.
and vomits in his belly button and goes to sleep. I would like to be, maybe. Sounds very romantic. But I think people's concepts of me are entirely wrong. Maybe I should leave him that way because the books are selling, right? Okay. Maybe I should throw this glass of wine into your face. It would help me sell 10,000 more copies.
Could be nice television.
But I don't want to do it. I'm sorry.
Hoe dan ook.
Get out of here. No. Okay. Man, that was a joke.
Have a good time.
Have a good time. We're trying to do what we do.
Be nice to the interviewer.
I like him.
Good boy to the interviewer.
I like him
Don't
much
fluster the
better than many have been here.
I know.
I
I
like
told him that's why
yes.
you're giving him a
He's a
hard
good man. No, he is. He's a good soul. Okay.
Okay.
Too
You
bad
can
for the
stay.
question.
I'm going to
Go
feed
ahead.
the cats.
Oh, you're going to feed the cats? All right.
Something totally different. How was your father? I mean, was he as...
He was a
Good.
complete sadist. He liked to beat people, and I was the smallest one around, so he beat on me. Especially with his razor strap, which he folded double and just laid upon me again and again and again. Unfortunately, I was there. I was the victim, and there was nothing I could do. He was bigger than I was. And I don't know what to say about it. It just kept happening. Any excuse, he would just beat me. We had a film.
You really hated him? Because there's a story in Hot Water Music called The Death of a Father. And you write, my father's funeral was a cold hamburger. He was an ignorant man, cruel, patriotic, money hungry, a liar, a coward.
Yes, he was.
A cheat. I mean...
But I didn't hate him.
That's different.
I have one problem. I don't hate people. They disgust me and I want to get away from them. I do not have hatred. I have an escape mechanism. Anytime somebody disgusts me, I just want to get away from them. I'm sorry if this sounds holy or something, but I don't have hatred. I have escape. No, I didn't hate my father. I just wanted to get away from him. And I did. And I came back, and finally he forced me too far, and I knocked him out. Or I knocked him down, rather.
KO.
Well, I didn't knock him out. I knocked him on his ass. Then when he got up, he fell upon the couch. I waited for him to get up, and he wouldn't get up. I was very discouraged. So I said, this man must be a coward. And my blood is his blood. I thought, I've got bad blood here. This man won't get up. So we're leading away from the question. Next question.
No, but did you cry when he died?
Cry? I never cry, baby.
Never?
Of course I do. But not at his death, no. I didn't rejoice either. But after he died, I felt like a different person, like I'd been freed. I started feeling happier. I got luckier. I laughed more. I felt better. I don't know, maybe I wanted him to die. I don't know. I've got a line in one of my poems that says, "A father's your
ISTP. Next person. Julian Casablancas, someone with my name.
Hey, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, Internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you are doing well. It's time for an exclusive conversation and interview with the one and only singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and frontman of The Strokes. It is Mr. Julian Casablancas coming in after the release earlier this year of the band's latest full-length LP, which I loved. A lot of people in the audience have loved, and we're going to be asking questions about that and more. How are you doing, dude?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So with the new record being out, you guys just dropped a new music video for it too, and it's had months to digest and sort of work its way through everyone's heads. What have you guys felt so far about the reception among fans and beyond, and also just your own feelings on the record now that it's finally out, and I guess you can maybe look at it in a more slightly objective way?
Honestly, it's probably too fresh to view it objectively. It usually takes a couple of years, I would say, until I accidentally hear something, and then I can, digest it with fresh ears. Yeah, I don't know. It's been good. It's been great. It's cool to see Rick Rubin's kind of work. I don't know, coming to light. Because we're working together, and it's just he's like a mythical person. So we're making all these decisions, and I really respected a lot that he was doing and a lot that he was saying, and I could kind of quickly discern that he was, pretty advanced music mind or human mind, or just kind of a super wise witch doctor, whatever. And so to see it kind of come out and have everyone like it, it's just like, oh wow, he did his thing and it worked and people liked it. It's kind of cool, I guess.
I mean, this is probably a pretty obvious question, but Rick Rubin, being obviously as legendary as he is this someone that you guys sort of had in mind for a while, someone that you've been wanting to work with, over the course of the band's existence?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for a long time. I mean, it's I don't know, it's almost a joke, probably, somewhat in the industry. I mean, everyone kind of wants to work with Rick Rubin, and I think it's, even though it's kind of thrown around in, I don't know, record label, meetings all the time, and it's kind of, probably like, made fun of on some level. I think it's there for a reason, and I think as, musicians, regardless of, jokes aside, I think we always did want to work with him. And I didn't hesitate. I mean, when he was down, I mean, he sequenced Phrases for the Young, and I've kind of met him and talked to him here and there. And Jason, who engineered, he produced, I guess, he produced Phrases for the Young. He engineered this record. He's worked with Rick. He's very close with Rick. So, I don't know. It's been a dream, I guess, for a while, but didn't know what to expect, but it was great. And I think we all we're hoping to maybe, dig in and work again now that the kind of, barriers or, I don't know, polite kind of, the kind of the politeness and the carefulness you have when you kind of meet and work with new people. I think, we could probably kind of dig into other deeper levels now.
And what would you say for this new LP and kind of where the band was at that point when making the record kind of changed conditionally that allowed for that opportunity to finally...
He definitely obviously doesn't like interviews. And, I can tell he likes his music to speak for himself. It seems more SE. Definitely more progression based.
Be able to work with Rick and do a record with him.
Sorry, what do you mean? Like why or what conditions?
Yeah. I mean, if it's something that you guys have been sort of like, hoping to do for a while, like what was it about this album and this situation that kind of created the opportunity?
I think he just liked the song. I think he just liked the demos. I mean, I think because we'd send him stuff before, and I think we kind of joked with him, and I think he's too polite to say it, or not polite, but yeah, I think he just connected to the songs. I think felt like we were ready. He probably meditated and saw that we were ready to embrace his wisdom. I don't know. Well, it was up to him, is my point.
Well, I guess speaking of that, like, was there, I don't know, I mean, how would you say?
Okay, so progression, INTJ, ENTP, INFJ, ENFP, ISTJ, ISFJ, ISTP, ESFP.
Because you guys have made so many records already, like how exactly did throwing Rick into the mix change the process, or what kinds of ideas was he bringing to the table that just kind of made this experience or the record itself radically different from anything you've done in the past?
Well, I mean, I'm okay. So I'm pretty,
also informative,
jaded, and
so he's not an INTJ, not an INFJ, not an ISTJ, and an ISTP?
I guess it takes kind of a lot, I guess, to impress, in the music world. I mean, I respect people and like working with people and have an open mind, but
he's so conscious and like not loose when he talks. It's an FI Dom thing, or an FI thing in general.
Meet someone who's going to kind of like blow your mind on a musical level with how they like think and approach things is going to be pretty rare for me. So I think it wasn't just the name that would have done it. I mean, I believed in him, or it's not like I doubted it, but you don't, until you see it, you don't, it wasn't like I just was drinking the Kool-Aid before I met him. As soon as we started talking, I just saw it was just kind of a simplicity, I think, in all things of it's, I think when you become so wise and you've tried so many combinations, I once asked him, I said, why are you so in tune with the universe? And he said, just because he's tried everything and he's just, and it's kind of goes to all things that I've always believed in, like the work ethic and all that.
He is an ES. Not surprising. Julian Casablancas is an ESFP. I don't know about Enneagram. Maybe. He's just a pretty chill dude. I don't know. I don't know about Enneagram. But he's an ESFP. Who's next? I think it's Mark Zuckerberg is next. The Zuck. It's gonna be hard to type in an Android. I wonder what personality they gave them.
Let's talk about free speech and censorship. It was immense. You actually did it. That is very impressive performance. Okay, now we can initiate the interview procedure. Is it possible that this conversation is happening inside the metaverse created by you, by Meta, many years from now, and we're doing a memory replay experience?
I don't know the answer to that. Then I'd be some computer construct and not the person who created that Meta company. But that would truly be Meta.
Right, so this could be somebody else using the Mark Zuckerberg avatar who can do the Mark and the Lex conversation replay from 4 decades ago when Meta it was first sort of...
I mean, it's not going to be 4 decades before we have photorealistic avatars like this. So I think we're much closer to that.
Well, that's something you talk about is how passionate you are about the idea of the avatar representing who you are in the metaverse. So I do these podcasts in person. I'm a stickler for that because there's a magic to the in-person conversation. How long do you think it'll be before you can have the same kind of magic in the metaverse, the same kind of intimacy and the chemistry, whatever the heck is there when we're talking in person? How difficult is it? How long before we have it in the metaverse?
Well, I think this is like the key question, right? Because the thing that's different about virtual
people tend to zoom in on the most important thing and cut out all the fat.
And hopefully augmented reality compared to all other forms of digital platforms before is this feeling of presence, right? The feeling that you're right, that you're in an experience and that you're there with other people or in another place.
SEFI, affiliative, experiencing things with a bunch of people, making connections.
That's just different from all of the other screens that we have today, right? Phones, TVs, all this stuff. It's, you know, they're trying to, in some cases, deliver experiences that feel high fidelity, but at no point do you actually feel like you're in it, right? At some level, your content is trying to sort of convince you that this is a realistic thing that's happening, but all of the kind of subtle signals are telling you, no, you're looking at a screen.
Authentic real experiences as he...
So the question about how you develop these systems is like, what are all of the things that make the physical...
Very robotic answers, programmed, very TE driven, very TE speech, systematic.
World, all the different cues. So I think on visual presence and spatial audio, we're making reasonable progress. Spatial audio makes a huge deal. I don't know if you've tried this experience, workrooms that we launched where you have meetings, and you know, I basically made a rule for, you know, all of the top, you know, management folks at the company that they need to be doing standing meetings in workroom.
Giving orders, making rules, expert thinking, systematic, direct.
Already, right? I feel like we got to dog food this. You know, this is how people are going to work in the future. So we have to adopt this now. And there are already a lot of things that I think feel significantly better than like typical Zoom meetings, even though the avatars are a lot lower fidelity. You know, the idea that
So we got INTJ, ENTJ, INFJ, ENFJ, ISTP, ESTP, ISFP, and ESFP.
you have spatial audio, you're around a table in VR with people. If someone's talking from over there, it sounds like it's talking from over there. You can see, you know, the arm gestures and stuff feel more natural. You can have side conversations, which is something that you can't really do in Zoom. I mean, I guess you can text someone over or like out of band, but and if you're actually sitting around a table with people, you know, you can lean over and whisper to the person next to you and like have a conversation that you can't, you know, that you can't really do with in just video communication. So I think it's interesting in what ways some of these things already feel more real than a lot of the technology that we have, even when the visual fidelity isn't quite there. But I think it'll get there over the next few years. Now, I mean, you were asking about comparing that to the true physical world, not Zoom or something like that. And there, I mean, I think you have feelings of like temperature, you know, olfactory, obviously touch, right? We're working on haptic gloves, you know, the sense that you want to be able to.
So he's a TE user, so we're down to INTJ, ENTJ, ISFP, SFP.
You know, put your hands down and feel some pressure from the table. You know, all these things I think are going to be really critical to be able to keep up this illusion that you're in a world and that you're fully present in this world. But I don't know, I think we're going to have a lot of these building blocks within, you know, the next 10 years or so. And even before that, I think it's amazing how much you're just going to be able to build with software that sort of masks some of these things. I realize I'm going long, but I was told we have a few hours here.
Yeah,
so it's
we're here for 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah,
at the
so
very
I mean,
least.
it's look, I mean that's on the shorter end of the congressional testimonies I've done. But it's but you know, one of the things that we found with hand presence, right? So the earliest VR, you just had the headset, and then and that was cool. You could look around, you feel like you're in a place, but you don't feel like you're really able to interact with it until you have hands. And then there was this big question where once you got hands, what's the right way to represent them? And initially, all of our assumptions was, okay, when I look down and see my hands in the physical world, I see an arm, and it's going to be super weird if you see, you know, just your hand. But it turned out to not be the case, because there's this issue with your arms, which is like, what's your elbow angle? And if the elbow angle that we're kind of interpolating based on where your hand is and where your headset is actually isn't accurate, it creates this very uncomfortable feeling where it's like, oh, like my arm is actually out like this, but it's like showing it in here. And that actually broke the feeling of presence a lot more. Whereas it turns out that if you just show the hands and you don't show the arms, it actually is fine for people. So I think that there's a bunch of these interesting psychological cues where it'll be more about getting the right details right. And I think a lot of that will be possible even over, a few year period or a 5 year period. And we won't need like every single thing to be solved to deliver this like full sense of presence.
Yeah, it's a fascinating psychology question of what is the essence.
Looking at, you can fake it reasonably well, right? So you can look at like where the head poses, and if it looks like I'm kind of looking in your general direction, then you can sort of assume that maybe there's some eye contact intended, and you can do it in a way where it's like, okay, maybe it's not a fixated stare, but it's somewhat natural. But once you have actual eye tracking, you can do it for real, and I think that that's really important stuff. So when I think about Meta's contribution to this field, I have to say it's not clear to me that any of the other companies that are focused on the metaverse or on virtual and augmented reality are going to prioritize putting these features in the hardware because, like everything, they're trade-offs, right? I mean, it adds some weight to the device. Maybe it adds some thickness. You could totally see another company taking the approach of let's just make the lightest and thinnest thing possible. But I want us to design the most human thing possible. That creates the richest sense of presence, and because so much of human emotion and expression comes from these like micro movements. If I like move my eyebrow, millimeter, you will notice, and that like means something. So the fact that we're losing these signals in a lot of communication, I think, is a loss. And so it's not like, okay, there's one feature and you add this, then it all of a sudden is going to feel like we have real presence. You can sort of look at how the human brain works and how we express and kind of read.
This guy's in the INTJ. He's not an ENTJ, and his fucking FE is horrible. He's so robotic and weird. Alright, I'm gonna end the stream.